Welcome back to the Without Context podcast, a podcast where there's no context. It is spooky month, so we will be covering spooky, scary topics all month. I'm miserable. Today I am joined by Decavolty and SharkyHat. I am, of course, AnxietyLasagna, and we are going to talk about some spooky games. Whether it is a spooky game that we've played ourselves, watched other people play, which is my experience, but just spooky video games that kind of stuck with us or shaped our understanding of the genre. I'm not going to go first. I'm going to let Sharky go first because I feel like he's the one with the most say on the subject. So we'll start out strong.
Absolutely.
Only because I had a channel that played horror games for a good many years. But I think the first horror game I played that really connected as a horror game for me was Silent Hill 2 on PS2, which also has continued to be like top of every horror game list as like one of the best like horror games ever made. Not for scares and stuff, but just for the story, the atmosphere, the themes covered in it, everything like that. And then once I realized, like, oh, that's you know a horror game, but it's not like a crazy like jump scare horror game. It was like thinking I went back and played the first one, and that one had just more like a general horror feel to it. And Resident Evil is always considered to be like horror games, but they play definitely more like action at times, especially more recent entries. I think 7 and 8 really just bring it back to like full blown horror.
It's
At least
great.
until seven's like, here's a shotgun. So it's like, all right, I guess we're doing this.
Gotta go blast it
So,
again.
but over the last few years, I've definitely played more of like the indie horror stuff that has been coming out. Stuff that has been on engines like Wolf RPG Maker, uh, the kind of imported stuff from foreign developers like Witch's House, Mad Father, Maseo, like all these RPG Maker style games that were done by one person or a small team that touch up on a bunch of different themes and all that, and they've been enjoyable. But I think overlapping with yours, Haley, Amnesia is Amnesia and Soma, both from the same developers. They are vastly different games in what they explore, but Amnesia did like really say like, oh, okay, this is a horror game. Like,
Oh my god.
because
That
there were
game, I.
times it's like there were times where it's like nothing's even happening. It's just like you expect something to, and like the music's going, and it's like the location, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here, and then nothing does. But you're just like back in your mind, you're like, come on, just hit me with the scare already, so I
It
can
is
stop
really
feeling this way.
good. It's really good at building suspense even if there's not like there isn't a payoff to it, and I think that added to how why that game was so popular and just kind of like I don't know if it necessarily shifted the genre. I don't play spooky games that often, but it definitely, and like I don't know if you played its other iterations where there was like Amnesia, Machine for Pigs, and
Machine for
Justine.
Pigs. I haven't
Machine.
played, and I haven't played the most recent one. Um, I know the most recent one, I think, kind of follows the first game to a degree. The second one's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
its own thing, or at least there's a
Just
connection to 1 and 3. So
I know Justine was probably, I mean, obviously like Amnesia the Dark Descent was like the scariest thing that I've ever played myself. But Justine was also spooky because it was like the same sort of premise where like it's survival horror, but the suitors in that game were really scary to me. And one of them yells at you and is really mean, and I didn't like that. But
I do want to interject real quick. If you hear something coming from Haley's end, like a little chattering, it's we determined that it's her like laptop doing something.
yeah,
No,
it's
it's just
nothing
spooky month.
spooky.
It's just spooky month. It's just on brand.
But
Yeah, I'm trying not to like touch anything, so hopefully it's not just like a weird rattle or something. But I'm not touching the.
Yeah, it's like so weird, right? I think it's just the laptop making some kind of noise. But yeah, Amnesia, like that game was great, and I know like there's a whole community of mods that make like their own stories and stuff in the engine that are really popular. I haven't played any of those, but Amnesia definitely like ranks up there as one of the scarier games I've probably ever played.
Yeah, I played it like my freshman year of college, like so fall 2010, because some of the guys I was friends with thought it would be funny when they realized like how much of a baby I am about scary stuff. To be like, oh my gosh, Haley, you should play Amnesia. And like I could probably play like a Resident Evil 7 or 8 and like I'd still have a terrible time, but the fact that you could fight back is really lucrative to me. But in that game, like your only option is to run away and hide, which is a little too real for me. Like that's what made like Outlast stuff so scary for me because that one still was like the only thing you can do is hide.
Yeah, and it fits this this little niche of games where it's like we can make a really good atmospheric horror game without being overly jump scary, without having to rely like on a fallback of like action and stuff like that. And yeah, and it's a decently length game. I think like a full playthrough is like 4 hours or so. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a bunch of like newer horror games where you get like an hour or 2 hours of playtime and like some cheap scares and stuff like that. Like a lot of people are like throwing up on Steam pretty much every day, like, oh, here's a new horror game, but you played it's like an hour and a half length just because most of the time is padded out by just walking around trying to
Yeah.
figure out where to go.
I also like that in that game there was like objectives and like a story that sort of wove it all together. So like by the end, which like spoilers for Amnesia: The Dark Descent, a game that is probably over 10 years old. When you defeat the guy at the end, like it's satisfying. And if you get like I think it has like bad endings and good endings if I remember right, but
I'm
getting
not
the endings is
sure. I don't remember, but I do remember at the end it's like you have to do like a I don't remember what you have to do at the end to beat the guy. I can't even remember like
you have to like run around the room as he's like doing stuff and like summoning the like tongue guys, you know? The
yeah.
like loose jaw potato sack looking oogie boogie dudes.
Yeah.
And you have to like turn off or turn on these machines and it like sucks him into another dimension. Cause like that was his whole thing is he's trying to get back to whatever dimension he's from. And you just kind of I don't know if you let him it's been a hot minute since I've played that game because Super Weenie Hut Jr. is over here doesn't like scary games.
I want to see you like live stream with just playing spooky games and just every time.
Um,
we can
good segue into that because I did do that
we
with
can talk about her playing
Skyebreaker.
Phasmophobia with Alvin.
Phasmophobia with Skyebreaker. So, for those of you who don't know, Phasmophobia is like a ghost hunting simulator game. Um, I think what was the scariest part for me was for the first like 45 minutes that I was playing with them, I didn't have my like settings correctly because like the graphics were too strong for my like academic laptop that I used to play it on. And so I couldn't see anything. I was like clipping into walls. I was like super laggy. So I just died every round, which is like a very scary experience. But I enjoyed dying because when I knew it was happening, I could just like take my headphones off and not hear the spooky sounds anymore. And then you get to like be in ghost chat and I could just like pull myself back together and just like
Sounds like
until
Among
someone
Us
else
being
died
in
or
the
they
ghost chat.
figured it. Yeah, that game is so scary because you can have like different size maps and stuff. And for me, the school was really freaky because it was so big and you could get separated from your people, which is when like the ghosts come and get you. Uh, I hated when I hated when there was this one ghost when it hunts it like turns off like you can't use any of your technology or like your radio to your friends but Sky was outside the house by the window where I was hiding. It was just like trying to distract the ghost away from me. But the ghost was like one of the like sing-song humming types. So
No.
I'm gonna set a scene for you. It's
Boy.
pitch black. You're playing Phasmophobia. It's pitch black in the game. You're cuddled in a corner. And all of a sudden, you just hear like this woman humming like a nursery rhyme. And I'm sitting there like in real life, just like cowering in real life, like not looking at my computer screen. I'm hearing Alvin like screaming outside of the window. And then it kills me, but I was just like, I'm having a terrible time. It's like you can't fight back unless you have like the right repelling agent for whatever ghost you're hunting. And like ghosts are the one thing in life that I don't want to say isn't real, because like what if it is and they're offended and they come and get me or something, but
Your ass for how dare you be wrong?
and no, spooky haunted stuff is so much scarier to me than like gore or like, oh, there's a killer on the loose. I'm like, I'm a woman in America. That's just a normal Tuesday for me, dog. But
I'm a
when it's
person of
like
color. That's a regular Tuesday for me.
yeah, it's a regular Tuesday. But the spooky, like haunted house sort of stuff, or like you gotta get this ghost out of a house, like that stuff, I don't know what it is that just freaks me out so badly about it, which I think was what was so scary about Amnesia, because you start off in a creepy house and you're just walking around and it's like, oh, here's this monster thing. And Phasmophobia is like, you're in a house and there's a ghost in it and it's trying to kill you. And nope. So while I enjoyed getting to hang out with Sky on his stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Skyebreaker.
It'll be in the bottom.
I don't think I could do that on a regular basis without drastically shortening my own lifespan and having to go to grippy sock vacation.
That's great.
Yeah, Phasmophobia is fun, but it sucks. Oh, it sucks. It's fun until it's not.
It's fun,
Like,
but it's not.
It's all fun and games. You're like walking through being like, Martin Stevens, do you want G Fuel? And then until Martin Stevens kills you.
Martin Stevens just shoves a thing of G Fuel down your throat and then you die.
The best
just
part
like-
is whenever the ghost name's Karen, so you'd be like, Karen, I would like to speak to your manager. And then she
Just
kills
the-
you, so.
Do you want some G Fuel? It's like, oh yes, it's the first ever gaming ghost.
Well, what happened was they were in a game before, like while my game was downloading, so he was on with his friend Brent, and they were in someone's house, and he's like, nice gaming setup, and I'm in the Twitch chat being like, ask if they want G Fuel. And when they asked if he wanted G Fuel, the ghost started hunting, and they're like, he wants the G Fuel.
That's awesome.
No G Fuel in the afterlife,
Okay.
apparently.
I think you might have those on past broadcasts and VODs too, so you might be able to see Haley's
Slip Haley
won't.
going
reactions to
feral.
it.
I'm not helpful at all. Like I'm like before the like hardcore gamers go in there, like it was probably like 3/4 of the way through me playing with them before I got my graphics settings like lousy enough until I could actually see and contribute to the hunt. Because like I watch Twitch streamers play it all the time, so I was like, I know how to play, I know the strats or whatever.
You know, kind of how
All
it
that
works.
went out the window as soon as I heard like a footstep or like a and then I was like, I'm out, I'm leaving, bye, y'all could die, I'm out, deuces, see ya. Nope, that game is spooky and it sucks.
Well, Deca, what do you have for us?
I am once again showing my whole ass age.
I thought you were gonna be like, once again, I'm showing my whole ass, and I'm like, not on YouTube, you're not.
TOS.
Terms of service.
In 1995, in April, there was a game that was originally made for the 3DO. Those of you who don't know what a 3DO is, imagine a Sega Genesis, which is like a square, like regular console. And you get to slap another console on top of it.
Bro, this is like the second time you've brought in like C tier consoles into our conversations.
Jeez, don't have to go after him so hard, Sharky.
It's like when I was playing my Jaguar, when I was playing my 3DO, and I'm like, bro, why do you have like the C tier of consoles?
I was 4. What do you want?
That's fair. I did grow up in a white family.
Did you have a
so...
Philips CDI? Like...
No, that was much too old for me. No, actually, what I am talking about is the Sega Saturn version of the game. Before you shit on whatever I was saying, Sharky. This game is simply in America. It's just called D.
Was it?
In Japan, it's called Dino Shikutaku or D's Diner. It is more of an interactive movie type of game where it's like Myst, where you like move around and do puzzles and stuff. The concept is so before we get into like the story of it, like there's a funny development story that I wanted to make. This game is
D?
made. It's just called D.
Okay.
It was developed by Warp, published by Panasonic and Acclaim. The director for this game is called Kenji Eno, and development was about a year, and Eno was it's probably like anyway, was afraid that because he had some scenes that were like in 1996, like groundbreaking horror, like people eating other people, and he was afraid that the censors would like poo-poo the game or not, or like try to like very heavily criticize it. So what he did is he made a cleaner version of the game, sent it to the censors, and then published the other game.
What a troll! That's awesome.
So D is you play as a character named Laura. Laura Harris. Laura Harris has learned that her father, a well-respected doctor, has gone on a murdering spree in a hospital and has barricaded himself within it. Upon entering the hospital, she gets she's like sees all the dead bodies and she's like kind of grief-stricken. She has her hands like this, with her hands covering her eyes and like kind of grief-stricken, like you would be knowing that your father's a mass murderer. When she moves her hands from her eyes, she's in a different place. She's in like a demi-plane of sorts. And as she's looking around, there's a voice, sourceless, that just goes, Laura. Laura. And you look around and you see like this distortion in the air that lightly resembles a head. And it's her father telling her that she needs to leave immediately, or he will turn it before he becomes this unhinged murderer. This is his last bit of sanity, telling her to leave before he kills her. So of course you don't.
See, that's the difference. That's why I feel like horror games don't appeal to me. If I walked into a hospital where my dad murked several hundred people, and then I went to a demi-plane where he was like, "Get out of the hospital, Haley," I'd be like, sucks, other denizens of this hospital. Later!
And then it just rolls credits. Like, that's why you'd survive a horror movie.
Turn into that mud song from...
So this game is unique because it uses a real lifetime. You have 2 hours of real lifetime, and if you do not complete what you need to do within those 2 hours, you are just trapped in there. You're trapped in demi-plane, and eventually your father kills you.
A lot of old games did that. They kind of put things into like a timer equivalent to real life, so you would get more playtime out of it. Because like if you fail the first time, you start like knowing what to do and steps and everything to kind of maximize it. So they're like, we're gonna artificially limit you to keep you playing this game until you figure it out. So
one of the other things that was super unique about this game is this game is it's probably not it's not like the first game to have alternate endings, but there's a one pivotal moment in the game where so spoilers for D, a game that certainly a lot of people played. As it turns out, your father eventually reveals to you that you are descended from a line of literal vampires going all the way to Dracula.
Hot. Hot.
And there is a pivotal moment in the game where your father is, well, not your father, is like in this, there's a long corridor, and I think he's next to a mirror or some shit. I remember this because I played this game. And you have two options. You can shoot him with a revolver you just happen to find somewhere in this castle place,
As you do.
Or you can walk up to him, and if you walk up to him, he will kill you and complete his transformation. But if you shoot him, Laura kind of cradles his body, and as she does, like the rest of the scene goes back into a hospital around him, and then that's the ending.
It seems like when you talked about the like artificial time thing, my brain was like, D walked, so was it Ocarina of Time could run? Is that when you had like a time limit?
I hate the way Majora's Mask did it, though.
It's like, I hate that analogy, but I think you might be right.
Which one has the timer? Is it Ocarina or Majora?
I think Majora's Mask.
Okay.
It had the day countdown.
Those games.
Yeah, I never played the N64 Zeldas.
This game actually was extremely well received everywhere it was. It was one of the best 3DO games of all time. It was probably the best, according to some reviewers like Game Informer, one of the best FMV games you will ever play. Just because of how spooky it is.
96, that was definitely like late in the FMV game lifetime. So it had years of seeing what other people did. So
could someone tell me what FMV means?
I'm sorry?
What does FMV mean?
Full motion video.
I don't know what it is.
So
I was 4 in 1996.
I was not much older.
There are two ways that it went about. One was using actual, like, real people recorded footage and like slapping it into the game as like the cutscenes.
Oh, like that one Zelda CDI game.
Yes. It was also an early, I think it was like the early name for like full rendered, like CGI characters, like being slapped in. Like the video itself is not in the engine; it's actually just a thing that plays when it gets to like a cutscene.
That's how this game plays. The latter one is how this plays.
Yeah, I was looking at
the graphics look like shit.
It looks bad. Laura looks like Michael
real
Jackson.
Bad.
Laura looks like Michael Jackson in the image that I saw. So.
My other thought I had as you were telling the story of this game, when you were like, spoilers, they're descended from Dracula, and I was like, become the monster fucker you always want it to be. You can't fuck the monster, become the monster.
I'm gonna check, actually.
It's just wild that you just find a revolver somewhere and then you're like, do I shoot him or not? Like, obviously you shoot him.
No questions asked.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to check because I wonder
hello,
if this is.
blah.
Wonder if this is in the same series as the other game I'm thinking of. I don't think it is, but
so this publisher or this developer makes.
He did it's D2 from the Dreamcast. Yes. It's the same.
Yep.
Same guy, and I think this might be a sequel. Yep.
So I think I can't remember if this Laura is the same Laura. I think that person just fucking uses Laura as the name. I think the publisher or the developer just uses Laura as the name.
Laura.
It stars the digital actress Laura, but has an independent story. They were using VTubers before VTubers were a concept.
Yep.
D2 walked so VTubers could run.
It's like, we're using the digital actress. And I was like, technically they were trying to go for a Miku thing where they're like, we're going to make a celebrity that's just a game character. And we're going to use her in different stuff as like starring this character. And it's like, I blame these guys for what we
I
have
blame these
now.
guys for VTubers. Shout out to my homie Cato Napo, one of my favorite VTubers. Anyway,
That's fair. I love Gura. So
yeah. So that's D. You have 2 hours and you run around and you solve puzzles, find a gun, and shoot your father.
look at Sky. Unfortunately, passed away in 2013. It looks like KGA. You
Oh
know,
my god, I thought you said Sky passed away. I was like, what the
Yeah.
hell? But this guy.
And Gino. Yeah.
it's unfortunate. He was only 42. Like he missed like the golden age of like the horror resurgence we've been getting. So
No.
Did
I'm
either
looking
of
at-
you guys play? I don't know if it counts as horror. I thought it was scary. Inside,
yeah,
where you play as like the
I've
little boy
seen-
trying to escape.
I've seen videos of it. It's the same guys that did Limbo, and it's like
Yes,
the
Limbo is spooky too.
it's like that weird black and white style horror, like side scroll kind of game.
It for me, and I feel like this trait about myself extends into a lot of media that I consume. I don't like when kids are in trouble and having to do things that are like beyond what we should ask of children. So like this little boy is like I don't know, like he's escaping some kind of facility and there's like adults and dogs and monsters and everything after him. And it doesn't even have a good ending for him. Like spoilers for Inside, but he ends up like a giant meat, like a flesh ball with
That's
a bunch
what
of other
I-
people's bodies.
That's what I remember. Yeah, it's like he falls into something and he comes out as like a big like blob mass.
As the Game Grumps said, he becomes a strong, independent nutsack who don't need no balls.
Did any of you? Did I? I'm assuming Haley didn't, but Sharky, did you play Galarians for the PlayStation?
Galarians? No, I haven't. I know the title, but I haven't played the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I'll be like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen that when I look up the. I've seen
You
that
look at
cover
the
art.
art.
I've seen
Yeah.
that cover art. I've never played this game.
Think of it as Resident Evil, but with psychic powers.
It's a cool concept. It probably
Yes.
failed horribly. Yeah, I got average.
No, it
reviews.
was quite interesting when I played it. It's not a. I remember like clips and phrases of like the I guess the FMV sequences where they're just like stuck. He's like stuck in a tube or whatever, and like getting told like you mentioning that this kid was in a tube reminded me of this game. Because I just remember him being like experimented on, and he just like fucking sets the person on fire.
This was definitely this was definitely one of the games that's like we're going to take that Resident Evil formula and try to play around with it. This was 99, so yeah, this was after at least Resident Evil 2, I think.
This is after RE2, yeah.
Oh man, 1999 was out when I was getting scared to do the Boo themed level in Mario 64.
Yeah, this came out right before Resident Evil 3 did. So
Mhm. It was an interesting game. I just thought I'd bring that up as well. Just because I'm just gonna keep showing my age in these video game ones, so I'm just gonna keep doing that.
well, I'm gonna
I mean,
let's take it
Go
back.
ahead, Sharky.
I started with Silent Hill 2 and then completely like moved on from the from it.
Yeah.
But I want to go touch on that a little bit again because I think the real horror from that game comes from the themes that it explores. Everybody knows Pyramid Head as an enemy. Even if Dead by Daylight, I think has him now too. So like it just shows
Daddy,
his.
sorry. Daddy, sorry.
But it's like I was fuck that game was what 2004.
It says 2001. I just looked it up
2001.
'cause I'm trying to.
So
feel
yeah, I
like I'm
was
contributing.
by the time I got to play it, I was just in my teens, probably like 13, 14. By the time, because I didn't play it when it just came out, I never even heard of it. But the themes of like loss and grief and like lying to yourself and like your wants and needs being used against you, creating these creatures, because that's what Silent Hill does. It's a purgatory of sorts that takes your takes your emotions and your fears and turns them against you, which is why later games don't make sense when there's like the same monsters, because it's like, no, those are specific to James. It should have been new monsters for these characters. Because like the sexy nurses, like the nurse monsters, that's James's like sexual need because his wife's not there anymore. And it's like that's the whole thing. The whole thing is this man's grief is being turned against him. But it's like the scene that like just really stuck. It's like, is James really a good person? Is when Pyramid Head first shows up and is very obviously like sexually assaulting another monster. And that's supposed to represent his like masculinity and stuff. So I was like, finishing up that game, I'm like, I don't think James is a good guy. Like underneath it all, like I know he's hurting and stuff, but I think like that's really like making him feel certain ways. And I was, and 14 like year old me was like, well, that's messed up. So
it's a little fucked up.
But I just really liked that like concept of Silent Hill, where it's like this place is a purgatory and you're going to face like everything you're either trying to deny or everything that you're feeling in one form or another, whether it be place or creatures or something like that.
It's interesting now that you've talked about Silent Hill 2, because I watched the Game Grumps playthrough of Shattered Memories, and it's still that like it's a purgatory, and like it's you start off like in a psychiatrist's office and you have to say like what the ink blots look like, and it ends up being that like the character's dead and he's dealing with like the fact that he wasn't there for his daughter, or like hasn't figured out that he's dead yet. And it like it was scary because that's like the jump scares of like the monsters and like the escape sequences, but like just that overall feeling of like limbo and dread and like something isn't right here. And now knowing that it's like a purgatory of sorts, I was like, oh, that game makes so much more sense now. Silent Hill place.
It kind of threw it to the side a little bit in the later games where they're like, oh, this is just a cursed town. There's a cult involved that was worshiping like some crazy god, and I was like, no, just keep it like an Afterlife kind of setting, like, because I feel like it loses so much if you just kind of
it was definitely a money
normalize
thing.
it. Like if you kind of like give it a reason, it starts to lose that like unsettlingness to it. Because you're like, oh, this is the curse on the town. It's not anything major anymore.
Well, think about like back in the early 2000s and stuff. It was the gaming landscape, I feel, was different. Like I don't think AAA games were a thing back then. Like I knew of Nintendo and like that was it. And of course there was like a few franchises, but like horror games I feel were still probably in their infancy. So they were able to like have a lot more nuance to them, where now it's like, oh, you gotta have the gore, you gotta have the psycho, you gotta have the cursed town, the cult or whatever, just because like that's what everybody expects, and they're not here for the nuance, they're here for whatever's the next big game that's going to get them the most clicks on whatever video they're posting.
Yeah, and I mean, this game has so much going for it. It's still considered to be one of the best video games of all time, not even just one of the best like horror games. And it's definitely a key example, it's definitely an example of games as an art form rather than just games as like an entertainment. And like I have the Wikipedia open here, just kind of go to this section to touch on Pyramid Head a little more.
I will scroll it.
Some of the more apparent themes that appear throughout the narrative include grief, guilt, and punishment. Seen during the game is James's guilty consciousness manifesting in the form of the enemies the player engaged with, the puzzles that they must solve to proceed, as well as the symbolism within them. A primary example is Pyramid Head, a tall, masculine, faceless humanoid figure whose head is concealed by a large pyramid-shaped helmet made of rusted iron. It also wields a large blade titled the Great Knife, which is heaves across the floor in almost all player encounters. Its design not only serves to psychologically frighten the player, as the sharp edges of the triangle head are intended to suggest a possibility of pain, as explained by Yasuhiro Ito, who I think is the director, but I think he might have another role. Is also emblematic of the many themes related to the narrative, as it represents the guilt that James experienced, the retribution he seeks for his actions, and the sexual frustration that he felt while his late wife, Mary, was terminally ill. because the whole thing is, if I remember the plot correctly, you're looking for your wife in Silent Hill, and then at the end it slaps you in the face that she's been dead the whole time. And like James just hasn't been able to confront that.
He hasn't been able to process it.
Yeah. So that's why it's like the nurses, like the like Pyramid Head, like all the stuff is all a part of his psyche in this place. Which definitely the later games lost that because they're like, oh, it's the same monster. And it's like, but that represents James's issue. That doesn't represent this character's issue.
But it's
like,
a marketable monster and we can just throw it in there.
And that's the thing. It's like the moment I think Konami gave it to another company, I think Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3 were made by Konami's like in-company team. And then The Room, Silent Hill 4, I think that's the same one. And like all the later ones were given to an American company. So it definitely,
that explains
it definitely took on a more like Americanized horror rather than like that deliciously sweet psyche-based Japanese horror.
Yeah. I also really quick wanted to add, and not to Silent Hill, but to B. There is a plot point that I completely missed because I had to read back up on it, but I do remember it now that I've seen it. You get flashbacks to being with your mother, who you learn is deceased. And it turned out you, Laura, killed your mother and ate her.
I did see cannibalism in the description, and I was wondering when that was going to come in.
And you've just been your father, the doctor, repressed your memories of it.
Is it bad that the first thing I thought of when you said that was that line from the new Bo Burnham special? Here's a healthy breakfast option. You should kill your mom. I'm sorry.
God. If I had something like that back then, I might have been able to like actually start playing this game. I've watched my mother beat this game, but I have not beaten this game myself. That's how I know there's 2 endings.
Game in my life. I watch other people play it so I can pause it, walk away, like scream into a pillow.
But
does anyone else have anything more to say about spoopy games?
I don't want to. Wait, sorry, we still got some time. So
yeah,
okay.
As a person who's played like a lot of horror games, in their life from early teens to still like nowadays, it's really cool seeing like the ups and downs of horror, especially when you get to like a world of like online gaming, where people don't seem to focus more on the standalone stories. It's kind of making it that replayability kind of stuff. Every gaming generation, we seem to get like that one horror game that really sticks. And Dead Space was like the most recent one I can think of, where Dead Space 1, it's like, hey, we're going to take all of the best concepts from Alien, like the first Alien, where it's just a claustrophobic, like pure horror game, and make it great. And that game still messes with me every time I replay it. And then it was like, number 2, let's take the best things from Aliens and make it horror, but with way more action. So we're going to give you a bunch of other stuff to do. And then they're like 3, and they slap you in the face with, here's online co-op. So it's like, okay, so you went full Alien 3 with this one. So
Metal Gear Solid. That's exactly what happened. Like the first 3, you get like this progressively weird experience. One of them is a prequel, and then the 4th one, online co-op.
Yeah, and it gets me is like they're remaking Dead Space. They have another EA has another company working on it, not the original guys. And they had put out like a little preview video of like the dismemberment system, because that's what Dead Space 1 was based on. You had to shoot the limbs off of the creatures to kill them. You couldn't just like unload bullets into them. You had to like take off a leg or an arm or something. So it was like, hey guys, look, we're doing that dismemberment system thing like the first game. It's like, okay, but are you going to understand the nuances of like the plot and the horror? Or are you just going to give us like an action game? So that's kind of what I'm salty about with this. It's like, we're going to kill the studio that made Dead Space, and then we're going to reboot Dead Space.
Yep.
It's like,
typical EA.
Okay.
Corporations are not your friend.
Yeah, so it's just like, god damn it.
On the
You guys could just
topic
kept
of
the
like,
studio.
on the topic of like generational defining horror games, I think it would be remiss not to mention PT.
Yeah.
PT.
PT. Okay.
It was that came out of nowhere, and it was the scariest thing I've ever watched.
And
honestly.
then Konami fucked it up.
And then Konami fucked it. So
Konami said, "Nope, not in this."
I don't know if everyone's familiar, but PT I think came out in like 2016.
I think
was
2016.
a playable trailer, where you just were stuck in this loop, and increasingly spooky things happened. There's a bunch of Easter eggs and stuff. Someone
2014.
hacked into the code and realized that the ghost of your dead wife or whatever was following you the whole
Constantly
time.
following
you
you.
can't
Yeah.
you can't turn around and see it. But it was so like disturbing. Like the sense of just dread and unease by like the constant loop that anytime it changed, it was almost worse than when it didn't change. And I remember being so freaked out by that game. And like to this day, I'll rewatch the game like during spooky month. I'll rewatch like someone play PT because like it's off the store, and finding consoles with it downloaded is like gonna cost you a couple grand on eBay.
Yeah.
But it was a trailer for Silent Hills,
Yep.
a canceled game that turned into freaking Death Stranding, which sucked.
No,
Death Stranding was so lame.
No, what happened was Kojima was working with Konami to make Silent Hills. He was like, "Hey, we're gonna kind of reboot the game series. I'm bringing in my best bud in the world, Norman Reedus." Because
Norman.
Kojima and Norman Reedus are like best friends. If you look at his Twitter at like any point of the week, he's constantly tweeting about Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen. Like, but it's like, yeah, we're gonna. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna make the Silent Hill games. It's gonna have Norman Reedus. I have Del Toro working with me to make the story. The creatures are going to be designed by Junji Ito, who is like a great Japanese like horror manga author. He makes like really fucked up like creature designs. So I was like, cool, we got like a sweet trifecta here. And then Konami's like, fire Kojima, shut the project down.
Best I can do is a pachinko machine.
The best I can do is a pachinko machine.
And it was such a bizarre business decision, because that PT was like the most popular game of that year when it came out, and it wasn't even a full game. It was like an hour and a half demo.
Yeah.
And it's still one of the scariest games of all time. Like the mechanics were great, the things you had to do were like carving the eyeball out of the picture was really gross. The jelly bean baby in the sink, hated it. Had a terrible freaking time.
But this didn't become Death Stranding. After Kojima got released, he started his own studio, and Sony's like, that guy's free now. Go pick him up and give him all the money. And they did. They were like, we're going to let you make whatever game you want. And he's like, I still have Norman Reedus here. So we're going to make this...
Walking the game.
Yeah, we'll make Amazon Delivery Boy the game.
Amazon Delivery Boy.
And then it's like, in typical Metal Gear Solid / Kojima fashion, it's like, you're not just a delivery boy, you gotta fight God.
You gotta fight God.
Something everyone always praises Hideo Kojima for being like this visionary, this brilliant person. In many ways, he is. But he needs that one person to be like, no, that's stupid. Stop that.
Kojima?
He didn't have
I like the idea. I like the idea. You're at a 12. Let's bring it at least down to an 11.
Like, bring it down to, yeah, exactly.
Just,
he needs that filter.
But
I feel like that game was destined to kind of flop because everyone was there was so much anticipation for it after PT, and they're like, oh, like he's finally free of whatever the restrictions that Konami was doing or whatever. But then we got Death Stranding, and everyone was like, I hate it.
He was trying to do what he did with Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear that was on the MSX computer system and the original Nintendo, where that Metal Gear Solid game was classified as like an action game because the stealth genre didn't exist at the time. He created the stealth genre with that game. So he was trying to create like a whole new genre of game with this one. And I mean, it's still getting like people are still playing it. People are still like, praising it. Like I didn't get around to playing it, but it's like it's just one of those things where it's like, maybe 5 or 6 years will tell if this is one of his like, great games or if this is like one of the flops. Because I know he's still trying to work with Del Toro to make a game that's basically going to be Silent Hills, but he can't use the title Silent Hills, so I think they still want to make a game together.
Quiet Mountains.
Quiet Mountains. Yep, there you go.
But
the hills have. Wait, never mind.
But yeah, so
The
it's
hills have grass.
I do watch the PT playthrough from Game Grumps every now and then because
so
I love Dan's escalating like panic is always funny to me. He's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done.
I have never related to another person who like parasocial relationship wise than I do to Dan in the PT trailer game. Like that is the worst. Like he's like, we were just playing Mario Sunshine and having a delightful time. Why did we stop?
They the Silent Hill Shattered Memories playthrough has one of my favorite Dan moments where he's just like, PewDiePie Markiplier, why do you do this to yourself? Like when he's getting freaked out. Like that's the one moment from that playthrough that I remember because he's like genuinely like angry at the two of them when he asks it. So
I asked that of like I didn't watch Jacksepticeye play through Resi 8. Like I didn't watch Markiplier play every Five Nights at Freddy's. Like
yeah. So a little bit of a trivia here, kind of taking it back to everything we've talked about today. The game PT after it was described as like one of the best horror games. But when Silent Hills was canceled and that was removed, the number 1 slot went back to Amnesia. So it's like,
well, I feel like a connoisseur of the horror genre since I have played maybe 15 minutes of Amnesia before I started to literally cry.
what was it? When I started off saying like I was playing like the RPG Maker horror games, which are probably a good place to start if you don't like horror because it's much less like classic like Nintendo graphics rather than like the full like 3D stuff that you'll see. It's pixel art, and there are some like legitimate scares, but it's a lot more like story and puzzle based. Whereas like you'll get the
horror.
Yeah, you'll get the ending by playing through the game, but you'll get the real ending if you take the time to like find collectibles in the game, kind of thing. And
see, I'm so scared of everything in real life that when I play a video game, the last thing I want to be is scared. I give people so many props for playing horror games, but for me, it's like, Haley, do you want to like slice out your own toenails or play 15 minutes of Outlast 2? And I'd be like, I guess I gotta say bye to my toenails. Like,
I played Outlast on my channel, and it was definitely like the time that I played it, it was definitely like, oh, okay, they're kind of bringing back like a good like classic horror game. Then I was like, does it really need this many dicks like swinging around?
Does it need that many dicks?
Like, there are so many like just pantless guys running around this game.
And then the second one is even weirder because it's like the cult one with Father Gabriel or Father Abraham.
Yeah, it was like crazy like cult, and I don't think it got a resolution.
No, I think you just die or something stupid. I don't know. But
Also,
are we? Go ahead, Deca.
Death Stranding has a person named Die Hard Man.
Yeah.
And
it's stupid.
Yeah, but
there's
they're like all legitimate actors too. Like they're all like
they're all legitimate actors, and they're
he
all
even has his bro
dumb names.
He even has his bro Del Toro in there.
I think he's Die Hard Man.
No, he's Dead Man or something like that.
I know Toro has a silly name. Guillermo
Yes.
del Toro.
Yeah, Dead Man.
Dead Man. Yeah, see?
Same thing. Same
Dumb.
exact thing. But are we
Yeah.
good on the spooky games? Are we good? Do we have anything else we want to add?
Just the final
good.
thing, the weirdest thing to me for Death Stranding was the character Heartman, because it's Nicholas Winding Refn, who's a director. He directed Drive, so that's where I knew him from, and I was like, the hell are you doing in a video game?
Get outta
Like,
here.
I was like, no, get out of here. But
Well,
yeah, it's just like,
I'm
it's just
sufficiently
a game.
spooked. I'm
You're
sufficiently spooked
sufficiently
for the
spooked.
day. I'm sufficiently spooked. I'm now gonna turn it over to our viewers. What's your favorite horror game? Let us know in the comments. I'm excited to see what sort of twisted, demented shit you guys play, and promptly not play it. You can find more info about us, your hosts, in the description box below. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, head on over to our YouTube channel to get all that info. I'm joined by Decavolty and SharkyHat. I am AnxietyLasagna. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Yep. See you guys.